might be on your mind. We will have some time for some Q&A at the end of our conversation today too. So keep in mind your questions. You can drop those in the chat if something comes to mind, or we'll be able to just unmute and have you guys participate directly in the conversation when we get to that point as well. So welcome to season 9 of Changing the Game. This season, we're talking all about powerhouse marketing and how to develop a powerhouse marketing plan and strategies, as well as creating a powerhouse marketing team and what that looks like. Excited to have 3 different advisors with us over the next roughly month, every 2 weeks. So if you don't have the rest of them on your calendar for our series, be sure to check those out so that you can participate in all of these or get all of the recordings if you're unavailable. We know the end of the year is fast approaching. It's that time of year where it seems like it goes quicker and quicker. So whether you've already reached your goals, you're on track, or you're feeling a little bit behind, what we want to do through this series is to make sure you walk away with some really actionable things that you can implement that are going to help you spend more time with more ideal clients, create more raving fans, stay on offense, and play your position so that you can score more in this business. For those of you that don't know me, I know most of you. I'm Jennifer Hensley with Playmaker Coaching and Consulting. I've spent over 20 years working with NM advisors and love to help you make sure that marketing is something that's really an asset in your business and helps you to be strategic, provide value in a way that's authentic to you and consistent and connected to what your business goals are. So this webinar is specifically for those NM advisors that want to grow and see marketing as a way that can help them create more scale and capacity in their business. So we're starting today with James Kaiser out of the Gamma Wealth Partners, and I'm super excited to have James with us today, especially if you're somebody that's considering teaming or rebranding, which I know I hear that conversation come up almost every advisor we talk to these days. This conversation is going to be particularly relevant to you. So welcome, James. It's great to have you. Thanks for taking the time out of your schedule.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Okay. Well, why don't you start us off before we dive into our topic in 10, just providing a little bit more background for those that are with us today about what your firm looks like, the size of your team, your market. Can you share a little bit more about just kind of overview with everyone?
Yeah, just who we are. So we're a team out of Bozeman, Montana. So when we're not in the office, yes, life is a lot like the show Yellowstone, but we have grown to a more national practice. Currently, it is myself and my business partner, Kelly Skeggs. He's been an advisor for, I want to say about 10 years, 11 years, and I actually got started as an intern back in 2008. We have a team of 3 that supports us, and then also a partnership with FPS. We've had a pretty long journey, so I guess just a little bit of background on Kelly and I, why we chose to partner way back when, as well as Ensemble. When Kelly started, I was a lot more involved in leadership, so I was helping mentor and coach him. He was an individual that was a career changer. He got off to a very fast start. And when I say that he gamed the system, he gamed the system. What do we tell new advisors? Prospect and dial. And if you can do that, do joint work. So he kept an incredibly full and busy calendar. All he did was phone and prospect, and then he did a lot of joint work. And I happen to be one of the key joint work individuals for him. So over a couple of years of just doing a lot of joint work, we found a lot of synergy in that relationship, and then eventually decided, hey, let's try out a partner deal. We were both trying to grow, we were trying to hire, and so that made sense. We started to split team members first, and then we started to split revenue. We actually created our first DBA that was extremely creative. It was Kaiser Skeggs Wealth Management. So, kind of the typical, let's just use our last names because we don't know what else to do. And we did that for about 5 years before we were able to actually Ensemble. And so we just crossed the 1-year mark back in June. But that's where, through that process, we started to connect with Jen and talk about what rebranding and everything's going to look like going forward, and what are we truly trying to build at this stage of our careers.
Yeah, I think that gives some context. And, everybody that we're going to have on this series is going to talk a little bit about those transitions and what that looks like. And you talked about the fact that you guys were already a DBA when we started talking together. Can you share a little bit more about why you chose to rebrand, why you thought that was something that was going to, what that was going to do for the firm?
Yeah, so I think one of the best pieces about just doing the ensemble and basically starting from scratch again. It is a long process. There is a lot of work that is involved there, and so it really forced us to take a step back because becoming an ensemble was part of our original 3-year vision. So once we were finally at that point and it was starting to happen, again, we had to take a step back and say, okay, well, now in this next phase, what are we trying to build and how do we want to go to market? And, what are we at the end of the day trying to create and leave behind? And so, in taking a step back, that's where we really crafted the vision and casted kind of the next 5 years and what does the team look like? How big is the team? And then we started talking about 10 years, 20 years down the road. And we both agreed that, ultimately we want to create a firm where there's G2 advisors, there's G3 advisors. We want to create something that's going to live beyond us. And so that was really kind of step one where it just didn't make sense to just use our last names again, right? Because if you're going to bring in G2 and G3, eventually they're probably going to change it and rebrand it when we leave. So we wanted to get ahead of that. And as far as creating the brands and I guess a new DBA, I think that's one of those things when you hit that crossroads. I had a lot of ideas originally. So if you have ideas, I think that's great, and then go bounce that off of people, or hire somebody like Jen. So that's what we did. We showed up to the table with a few different names, but if you're really struggling with that, that's where I would say Jen and her team brings a lot of value because they do some deep fact finding, really help you identify values and your identity and things like that. What do you want to represent or go to market with? But we came to the table with some names, and it was interesting. Gamma was one of those that I think was last to be added to the list, but I guess the background behind that and why I wanted to keep that in there and was really talking to Skeggs about it was when I started to do more fee-based planning, a lot of my approach, a lot of my introduction talks about the value of sound financial advice. And I would talk about planning alpha, being more intentional and strategic with your financial decisions can increase your net worth, help you pay less taxes over your lifetime. And so we always leaned into what we do first, and I guess truly what we sell is a plan, right? And kind of get the focus off of tools and products because those are really solutions, but we want it to be very much planning focused and help clients with all the other things that I guess are less quantifiable than just a rate of return. And so when I was studying for the RICP, there's a full section about gamma, and that's really talking about the value of financial planning and good sound advice. And I was like, holy cow, I've never had a word to actually describe what I explain to clients. So that really resonated deep with me. And then also reading the Morningstar article from David Blanchett that talks about alpha, beta, and now gamma and going through that. So there was some really good, I guess, high quality material that I could reference and also share with clients to help tell the story. So that's kind of where we went through the list of names, and then Jen was awesome. She surveyed clients and team members and some other individuals and got feedback, brought that back to us. So it was a pretty, I would say, labor intensive process, primarily for Jen doing all the heavy lifting there. But the feedback was exactly what I wanted. So yes, I am a Marvel fan. I do love the Incredible Hulk. When most people think of Gamma, that's probably one of the first things. Complete transparency, Thor's my favorite, but it's always fun to have a name like that where it is almost, it probes clients to ask questions and explain what that means. And so we wanted to also create a brand and a name that we can describe and explain in our own words to clients, and it's also engaging. So, we kind of joked Like when we do, we're at social events or whatever the case is, everybody talks about your elevator pitch, right? What do you say? Most people ask me what I do. Uh, I own a wealth management firm. Oh, cool. Are you independent? Who you with? Gamma Wealth Partners. And you can kind of see the pause. And so sometimes if they don't ask those questions, I'll just say, yes, Incredible Hulk, huge fan. And they just kind of joke, and I'm like, yeah, but in all seriousness, here's what we do, and here's what this means. And so it creates an opportunity for conversation and engagement, and we wanted that as well. So I think that whole branding, it was a big process, but it was extremely methodical, and we went back and forth on a lot of different things. Some of them are, they would be kind of generic, or they would be in other industries, could be taken in different directions. And so ultimately, through that full process of filtering, that's what we came up with.
I like that you talked about, that doing some vetting because you guys already had a name too, and you knew this was going to be an undertaking. And like you said, that you wanted to last for generations. So you didn't want it to be something that you're like, hey, let's just go with this name. And then 5 years down the line, be like, oh, that wasn't really the right one, that you wanted to be really purposeful around it and find something that really intersected with you guys in a personal way in some way, as well as told a story about really who you are as a business. I love that, how that came together. And I think that makes a special story, like you said, that you're able to really make it come to life when people are meeting you for the first time, and what that means and how that represents you and the work that you guys do. So often I either see advisors come to me with one or two things. Either they're like, hey, I know exactly what name I want it to be, which is the few and the fortunate that are like crystal clear on that, or most that are like, I don't even know where to begin. What should we call ourselves? There are some steps you can do, like James talked about, around like going through and brainstorming some things and vetting that out to help kind of give you more confidence. But sometimes it just takes time too. And I know this was definitely a journey for you guys. So tell us a little bit more too in that space around, like, if you had some specific keys to success, like how to keep growing the business and make sure that this doesn't just, you can't just stop and do nothing else. What are some of those specific, things that, to be able to create success at the same time and keep growing while you're kind of rebranding and elevating your marketing?
Yeah, I think for us, that's where a team comes into play. So when we met Jen, again, a lot going on through the transition. We knew we needed help. I guess kind of a funny backstory. We had tried to rebrand, and we had tried to do some of that stuff on our own when we were forming the DBA. And again, you understand how creative we are. We settled on Kaiser Skaggs Wealth Management, and we never even got to the point of having a logo. We tried several times, but never liked anything. So I think while we're running practices, while we're being very busy, trying to grow, also trying to service, you have to leverage a team. And we were also very fortunate. We had some key team members at the time, Jamie Critelli in particular on our team, who's essentially our practice manager, our COO. If it wasn't for her, we probably would have never gotten anything done, because Jen would send some follow up or some material. And I'm a typical advisor. I'm focused, 60 seconds ahead. And if I move beyond that mark, I'm going to forget about it. So she kept us organized, kept us structured, getting us what we needed for Jen to do her job. So I think, our team plus hiring a team for that was very important. And Jen was actually there. It was part of what made it more challenging, is we had actually lost two team members during the ensembling process, and then hired another one and had to train. So Jamie's a total rock star. Not only was she absorbing additional work, she was training plus helping us manage here. But at the end of the day, it's all about prioritizing our time, and also focusing in spending our time in areas that give us energy. I get energy from client meetings. I think that is so much fun, talking with people all day. All the extra curricular stuff, branding, marketing, surveying clients, getting testimonials. We had tried to get testimonials before, kind of dropped the ball on that. So Jen was able to, do a great job getting testimonials, following up with clients, and then, putting that in a meaningful place when it was all said and done. So I think there's only so much that we can do during the day or throughout the course of the week. And, how much stuff do you want to have to come home and work through or just delegate it? And I'm a huge delegator, so that worked out well.
Yeah, and I think I hear you talking about, like we had certain things on the calendar to make sure that we could keep moving and have that focused time of those places where it was important to understand the brand identity from you and from Kelly of like, what did you want people to feel? What do you want to be known for? Who is your client? But then
Right.
how can we, Jamie and I work more collectively on some of the nuances of that. How much do you want to be involved in different pieces of it versus, yeah, what is the best use of your time? So I'm glad you talked a little bit about that. And you mentioned about how you kind of took a little bit of a risk with Gamma too, of the fact that like not everybody knows exactly what that means, or they automatically
Almost
assume like,
nobody
is this
knows what that means.
Marvel? But it's worked to your advantage. So I'd love to hear before we talk a little bit more about your team and everything, just around what's been some of the impact as you went through this. You said you're a year out. How have things changed? Why has it been worthwhile to put in that time and energy to go through this process at this point?
Yeah, for us, it was definitely worth the time and the energy on a couple fronts. So one, it gave us, I guess, some renewed energy and it gave us a new message. And so we were excited to get that out to existing clients and talk about how the business has changed, how that can benefit them, um, the direction that we're taking things, our values, our mission. And so for, some of our top clients, our key clients and COIs, it was an exciting time to go back and re-engage on a deeper level and just explain all the changes that's happening, why it's happening. And, it was fun to see them get excited about that as well. I think as far as new clients, what it's allowed us to do is now that we had a true identity, it was how do we package that and how do we get in front of new people and how are we sharing that with new people that haven't experienced us before. So, um, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but like a pitch deck for an example. So we leverage that whenever we get introduced to somebody, we send that before the intro call, and then we navigate that through the intro call. So it was nice to have some material and fluid messaging throughout, throughout that piece to really help them engage and understand who we are, how we're about, and how to engage with us. The other thing too that was a part of that, and another thing we were excited about with the ensemble was the website. So prior to ensembling, as I mentioned, Kelly and I were partners, and it was a DBA, and everybody understood us as a unit and a team. But then we'd get introduced to somebody and they'd say, "Oh yeah, I Googled you." We hated that. That was cringe. I'm like, I really wish you didn't do that because our old websites were separate. We tried to mirror them as best as we could, but um, they were just messy. They didn't have our messaging. It looked unprofessional from what we were trying to present as a unit because, again, they had to be separate. And that was also a big deal for us to get a unified website and then also to be able to go through every single section of the website and craft it and customize it in a way that we wanted to represent what we wanted to get out in front of people. So now there is a link to the website in our footer and it's, we'll send the intro PDF, check out the website or tell people to check out the website. We actually enjoy sending people there now. It's a much better experience, but previously, like I said, it was cringeworthy. It was like, oh, I really wish you didn't Google me. Sorry about that. But let's talk.
So you talked a little bit about like the logo, the name, the capability stack, the website, how you're actually using some of these tools and the positioning and everything overall as well when you think about your brand identity. If somebody else is just thinking about getting started in this space, like what advice do you have if this is something that's on their mind? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, I think, there is power in a DBA. And so again, you don't have to be an entity or an ensemble to have a DBA. I don't know exactly when you can get a DBA. I see John Horton, he could probably explain that, but um, and I don't know if anybody else is on the Nick Packler series, but he talked about this last week as well. So I would say the first step is spend some quiet time and really think through, like, again, what you're about, what you want your identity to be, what your core values are, what your process looks like, and try to figure out if you're going to rebrand and you're going to market yourself a certain way, how are you going to present that? And again, some people are creative and can do a lot of that work on their own, but um, I think I'm kind of creative to a certain extent, but then it's all the follow through. So even if you are creative, I think eventually you need to hire somebody. It is worth spending the money to, again, build the confidence that the direction you're heading is right. Professionals in this space, they have a process to take you through. So um, that way nothing is being overlooked. And at the end of the day, I think execution is where people fall short most of the time. And I share with you, we fell short of that several times until we hired Jen to bring us through that process. So not only was it a better experience, where we arrived is probably way better than I could have done on my own, but it actually got done. So I think a lot of times when we think about rebranding or we think about our identity, there's a lot of excitement up front. But as soon as that fire kind of starts to dwindle a little bit, we let it go and we spend a lot of energy and time on something that um, never became real. So, I think through it a little bit, but if you're completely stuck, you got to bring in somebody else that can help you arrive at where you want to be.
We had some of the conversation before we went live with everybody too about this journey and like getting a point of like, yeah, going from where there's the energy around like a name and a logo and all that sounds fun to the like, oh, now we're looking at fonts and like all the little pieces and like the time and effort that goes to it to actually get it from, yeah, the fun ideation piece to over the finish line. But then also, like you said, it's not really done. Like there's still so much more that you see for the vision of the firm and where you want to go, but how you've been able to kind of break that down and think about, well, what can we tackle right now and how do we continue to work closer towards that vision? If there's one, final like tip, and then we'll open it up some questions as well that you want to give somebody of like, hey, what's something really small, tangible in the next week to get started? What advice do you have for them? What do you suggest?
Yeah, I think there's two things that I would speak to on this. The first one is, and it should be a no-brainer, but I was terrible about this. But I think the first thing is you got to segment your book, and there is so many great tools and resources we have available to do that now through NM Connect and CRM. We chose to segment through revenue, so we would pull that, and then you can just hop into NM Connect, plug in what you need, and you just start going through the list. And for a practice like Kelly and I's, where combined experiences over 25 years, we have a huge clientele book as far as households, from our client building and reps leaving and um, you know giving over clients and things of that nature, and it kind of turned into chaos. And so we were rebranding, and then part of that is really what kind of service and deliverables are we going to have, especially for A pluses and A's. We had to go back and do that. And so that was a big deal. But I think also through that process, it really helped us with client engagement. So there's various things to do. Everybody that is a B now segmented in our book, who's probably not really getting conversations because they haven't grown with us too well, but maybe they're great people. Um, we've revisited a fee-based planning campaign. So it's engaging, saying, hey, this is how we're working with people. We haven't done this we haven't connected for a while. We feel bad about that, and we want to talk to you about, how can we re-engage? And we have different options for that. So I think with the segmenting, it gives you the opportunity to go back through your book, truly evaluate it, and then figure out internal campaigns that I think, especially as we're getting into fourth quarter and kind of that year-end push, going back through and turning over those stones that maybe you haven't touched for a while. So segment the book and really think about that. Analyze your business and where you're at, and I think that's going to help you with the growth also. And then the other thing too that I think is quick to do in the next couple of weeks is the pitch book. So I explain that. I think we all have an approach language that we go through. Um, and for me, it was nice to evolve my approach with a tool and a resource that is visual. It documents, it clarifies everything that I explain. They can go back and reference it after the conversation, but also I get that in front of them before we meet. And I do get some initial questions around what's in there and what's on their mind after going through that. People are like, oh, I didn't know you did all this, or um, that's been in the back of my mind. Can we save some time for it? Yes, absolutely. So if you don't have a piece that, again, speaks to you and your value and your process, how to engage, do that first and foremost. That we've gotten constant feedback from clients that, that's a great piece and it really helped, or especially when clients say, hey, I have somebody to introduce you to, what should I tell them? I just say, hey, I'll shoot you an email. It'll have the intro piece, get that in front of them, and then I'll schedule a meeting. So
Yeah,
I
I
would say
love that.
those
It
are the
really
two
helps
things.
you kind of control the narrative. And, one of the things that we have the most ability to do is to really put our voice out there. And you guys are doing that by having all these resources to tell the story and to help equip other people with. We have time probably for one or two questions before we wrap up today. If you don't have time to get your questions answered, or you want to talk more specifically, you can reach out to me at jennifer@playmakercoach.com. Would love to talk with you individually about what's on your mind. And you can also comment on our event that we had for today that's on the LinkedIn page. And we can comment, James or I can comment, respond back if there's anything that comes up from our conversation. One of the things that you hit on, James, that I wanted to follow up on is, you took a risk with the name and everything. You talked a little bit about that some people didn't know, or they make, it's kind of a joke in some way and stuff. But can you talk a little bit more about why you ultimately decided, like, hey, feels like that's the right name? When did you know that you had enough confidence to say, this is it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think I just go back to I can very vividly remember sitting in the office at home, going through the RICP, that section, it just, I don't know, it just kind of spoke. So I still get the feeling of that aha. Um, but then I think ultimately what buttoned it up is after you did the surveys and the way that you approach it as far as, hey, what comes to mind as far as gamma? And people were all over the board, right? I think a couple maybe said Marvel, or a couple said gamma radiation. We have some clients in the medical field, but that's kind of a negative tone or whatever the case is. And then you said, okay, well, that's some great feedback. Here's what it means, and how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's what the experience is in working with James and Kelly? And they said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's great. So as soon as people understood it and you gave us that feedback, those were the things that I was going for. Was I wanted that to resonate when we did explain it, but then also um, I like that people didn't really understand what it was, so it gave us the ability to share with them what it meant to us and what we try to do with that.
Yeah, a little bit of intrigue, right? Sometimes that can be a good. And that goes back to sometimes your brand identity. Are you a trust brand, an innovative brand, a luxury brand, an intrigue brand, kind of some of those
Right.
things too that you want to think about. So I appreciate having you on today. Encourage everybody to come back 2 weeks from today on September 9th when Mike Riggs out of the Kansas City office with Sarnik. He's going to be talking a little bit about some of the things he's done with his digital presence and what Powerhouse marketing has really meant for him. So we hope you can join us for that. And James, as a token of our appreciation, I want to be able to support an organization that you're passionate about. Is there a charitable cause that we can give back to for you joining us today?
Yeah, actually, I just got an email from an organization we support. It is the Lightwell Foundation. They are local here in Bozeman, and they support local kids in our community that unfortunately have childhood cancer. So um, I love that organization. They're doing one of their fundraisers here in a couple weeks. So that one would
Sounds
be
like a great cause,
amazing.
aligned, I know, with a lot of the work that Northwestern Mutual does in the childhood cancer space and everything as well. So Yeah, we're happy to be able to contribute to that, especially it sounds like good timing and everything. So remember James's try it at work tip to segment. If you haven't did it yet, get started on that. It's going to make so many of your other marketing efforts so much better. And if you don't have a pitch deck, a capabilities deck, I know there's a lot of templates to help get you started, or we can certainly help you create something custom in that space if you're interested as well. So I'll leave you with this thought today is, as we go into the fall and the change of the seasons and kind of like the new year, right? For many of us, as our kids go back to school, at least, is you don't have to figure this all out alone. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars or thousands of hours to create powerhouse marketing, but you too can become a powerhouse marketer. So we look forward to seeing you all again in a couple weeks. If you have those additional questions, reach out. We'd love to help answer those or get you support in any way we can. Thanks again, James, for joining us. I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.